Welcome to this quick word. Today's subject is God's classroom and a study of the word paideia. As you can see on the screen, paideia, there's the Greek word and the English pronunciation of it, paideia. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the passage, Hebrews 12, 4 through 11. And when you look at that passage, you see highlighted on the page here the word chastening, chasteneth, chastisement, and then the word corrected. Now, all of those words come from the root word paideia, some form of it. Now, this is the King James Version of this passage, and we use that because it makes the most contrast between what the Greek word actually means and how it's been translated and understood in English. So what we're going to do is we're going to read this passage, and then we're going to take a look at the Greek word paideia. So let's go ahead and start with verse 4. You have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. And ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards, and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits, and live? For they verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. What do you think of when you hear the word chastisement? I Googled it, and the definition here, and I think it's a little mild actually, it says chastisement is the act of scolding or punishing someone. If you talk back to your stern teacher, you won't be surprised by the chastisement that follows. The noun chastisement usually means a verbal reprimand, like the chastisement a basketball coach might give his team after a terrible loss. So I don't know about you, but that word, for me, it seems to include with it. Now we're talking about the English understanding of chastening. It seems to include that sense of anger, that the person who has been offended or wronged is striking back with a harsh punishment because of what was done. So that's the sense of what we've gotten in English. Now let's take a look at the definitions of the Greek word and words that underlie this word chastisement. Now here's what you have to remember. The King James Version of the Bible shows us something from hundreds of years ago, a few hundred years ago. It's Old English. It refers to the way things were looked at in that culture. And people were, I would say, children and women and servants. Even people were enslaved in those cultures, even in the English culture, and they were treated harshly. So the word chastisement reflects that, but then we have the Strong's Concordance here, and that's a study book from over 100 years ago that took every word of the King James Bible and defined it, put a little definition in the back, numbered it, and so it also reflects that maybe we would call it Victorian era. Where the morality was, the sense of morality was high, and a harshness for those that would break a rule or something like that. So anyway, here are the definitions. Now, all of those words that we saw in Hebrews 12, 4 through 11, all the words chastisement and correction, all of them have this root word underneath it. So let's take a look at that. We see the words, the numbered 3809, 3810, 3811. And they mostly all mean something very similar. The word is paideia. You can see there how to pronounce it. 3810 is paidutes. 3811 is paiduo. But all of them have to do with tutorage, education or training, disciplinary correction, chastisement, instruction, nurture is included in there. It can refer to the trainer or teacher, him or herself, the discipliner, the one which gives the correction or the instructor, and also this process of training up a child, educating, the discipline, the chastening, instruction, learning, and teaching. So all three of the, well, 3809, 3810, both stem from 3811, paiduo. Now, paiduo stems from 3816. So let's go down a little further on the page and let's take a look at 3816. And that word is pais. Now, it says perhaps it comes from 3817, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. So what you have to understand is all of these words, they're connected, and in Greek you just continue to work your way back until you get to the root that lies beneath the various words that have been formed on top of it. So 3816 is pais, a boy as often beaten with impunity, or by analogy a girl, a child, a slave or a servant, a minister to a king, a child, a maid. So what we get here is this word pais is referring to this subservient person, a boy or a girl, a slave or a servant, someone in service to a king. All of them are under the control of someone over them. All of them are subject to punishment if they do wrong. All of them are servants, even slaves, depending on the situation. So pais refers to that subservient individual. Now, 3817 is paio, a primary verb, and it means to hit, to smite, or to strike. So if we take those together, then what we understand is if paio means I strike or I hit, and pai is also found in pais. So in other words, it's the punishment or the discipline, the striking that happens to that one who is subservient or a slave or a child in those days and in that culture. So what we understand then that paideia does mean education, and it does have with it that idea of strong correction, but there's really more to it for us to understand so that we understand that the Hebrews passage better. Have you ever heard of the word pedagogy? Well, the Greek word, Strong's word 3807, is paidagogos. Paidagogos. You can see that it has that root word pi in it. So it is talking then about that one who is under submission. But as we look at this word paidagogos, what it means is a boy leader. Now, the way we know that is because the part of the word where it says agogos comes from the Greek word Strong 71, ago, which means to lead. So what we have here is boy leader. Pi means boy or girl, but pi means boy, and ago means to lead. So a boy leader. Now, in that classical Greek culture, what that meant was a servant whose office it was to come get the children and take them to school where they could learn, to take them to the place of learning. So you can see, so literally then, this boy leader is the one that facilitates the education of the child or the servant or whoever it is by leading them to the place where they can get instruction. So you can understand figuratively then that pedagogy, instead of these days, we're not talking about a boy leader taking someone to a building, but instead the person who is responsible for bringing education to a person. Okay, so pedagogy in our understanding today means education or lessons or a process of being taught or teaching someone something. So pedagogy uh, comes from this root word as well. So what we see then, the big picture here that we're seeing is that underneath this word chastisement, yes, it can mean the harshness of a punishment, but for the most part, what it means is tutorage, education, training, discipline, leading someone to that place of education. And yes, it does envision that person being submissive to the one who is giving the correction. But the correction is being given in order to train up the child. It's being given to educate. It's not meant to be an anger because someone's just angry at something. Instead, it's meant to be an education, a disciplinary process. So while it does, and it can include that the harsh aspect of it, the bigger part of the definition here is education, the process of learning. So if we go back then to this Hebrews passage, and instead of seeing chastening, if we put the word education or tutoring, then it brings out a different picture, doesn't it? Let's look at verse 5. You've forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the education of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he educates, or tutors, or trains, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure education, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father educates not? But if ye be without education, whereof all are partakers, then ye are bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we've had fathers of our flesh which educated us. Corrected is a good word actually here. Taught us, tutored us. We gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily for a few days educated us or corrected us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no education or tutoring for the present seems to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Now, when you look in verse 7, it says, if ye endure chastening, or if ye endure education. What it's referring to here, and I believe it's the NIV that translates this, if ye endure hardship. So what it's really trying to say is that when you are going through a problem, that problem could happen to anyone, but if you will endure it as God's opportunity to teach you, correct you, educate you, then ultimately God will bring you to that harvest of righteousness and the peaceable fruit of righteousness. So we have a choice. We can look at our troubles and our problems as just things that happen to us. We could even make the mistake of saying, well, it must be that God's angry at me and has forsaken me. Or we can understand that God, because he is a good, good Father, he uses the situations in our lives. Maybe the enemy brings it to us. Maybe it's our own mistakes. Maybe it's just stuff that happens. Or maybe even God has to speak a word to us by conviction of the Holy Spirit to correct us. No matter what the source of the problem is, God, if we trust him, if we are walking with him, if we understand that he is our Father, and if we submit ourselves to him, He will use those things to teach us, to correct us, and to make us fruitful. Why? Because He loves us and He cares about us. Well, I hope that this was an encouragement to you. You can look for more quick words at clmonline.expertlearning.net. God bless you.